Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. In today's Rambling in the TARDIS, we take a look back at Josephine, Jo Grant, and her time in the TARDIS. We'll be talking about her strengths and her weaknesses, and also discussing her best and worst stories.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on Jo Grant, so to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Team, that's TIMETEAMP on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. Now, Paddy, do you want to tell the lovely listeners how we usually go about these ramblings?
So, normally in the Ramblings, we spend a bit of time just talking bollocks, but no. What we will do is we will discuss the outgoing character, so in this case it's Jo. We will discuss the weaknesses that we think she has, and then the strengths that she has, and then we'll top it off by giving each of our own three lowest stories and three highest stories where the character was reflected the best.
Yes.
So, do you want to start off with the weaknesses?
Yeah, I think we started doing that a while back where we did weaknesses first to end on a high note because we really were like, this is either awesome and this is why they suck.
Yeah.
For me, I have one major weakness for Jo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you see this the same way as I do. For me, Jo's biggest weakness is her confidence, or rather her lack thereof.
No, yeah.
Like, you could say she's klutzy and she's ditzy, but for the most part, except the Green Death, she grows out of that over time. Her confidence, though, is something that can be very easily shaken, and it shouldn't be because she's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Jo, that's probably like her biggest weakness is the fact that if someone talks down to her in a certain way, she will believe and act in that way.
Yeah.
Which I think does her a massive disservice.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree. Because what I have down here, right, is that for the weaknesses for Jo, I think was actually kind of tough because we've talked before about her character development throughout her run is probably the best we've seen. And so a lot of her weaknesses, they actually go away after a while because of the character growth. She overcomes those weaknesses so that they're no longer ever present. And I agree that like she does get down on herself unnecessarily at times. Like she is too hard on herself. And like she also kind of gets cowed when she upsets people that she likes, you know, or when they have a they have a bad reaction to what she has just done. And look, I'm very much like that, as you well know. Like when I think my friends are upset with me, I'm not, overly happy with myself. And I've took me a good while to get over my own self-esteem issues. So I kind of going over these stories with Jo, I've actually realized that I empathize with her a lot more. Like I can see myself kind of as Jo, aren't I pretty? But yeah, no, I will definitely agree like that. In a way, yeah, she in a way that she almost doesn't have any weaknesses because as they go on, she stops being the character she was at the start. Whereas other companions, like Barbara is a good example of this. I think Barbara comes to us as a fully grown individual. It's her experiences off world and in the past that showcase her own ethics and her own weaknesses and stuff like that, and they're always there because it's just one of those things of where I suppose she's trying to find her way back home, whereas Jo, she's on Earth for a very long stretch of time, and then the Doctor has a better working knowledge of the TARDIS, so he can get her back to Earth when needs be. So it's not the same case as like say Barbara. But yeah, so I would think confidence is probably her biggest thing.
Yeah, which this just reminds me of like my first performance review in work, where like confidence scope is my biggest thing. But what I like about confidence being her biggest weakness is that it's a very relatable weakness. Do you know? I can understand how people connected to Jo. It's very easy to see yourself in her.
Yeah, and like I suppose, as much as we say that the Barry and Terence didn't really actually nail the whole thing of writing the feminist character that they had wanted, they actually succeeded in the other thing, which is Jo becomes actually a perfect gateway into the show for us because we can really relate to what Jo is. even to this day, like even now, we're over nearly 50 years removed from this story and from Casey's run on the show, and mentalities have changed and mindsets have changed, culture has changed, and younger people like that are slowly getting into the show, while things are different for them, they can still relate to this character.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things that Joe puts up with that people nowadays wouldn't.
Yes. Yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
but the core aspect of it, the core part of her, um, like I said, that sort of desire to please and to be appreciated and to contribute, and feeling bad when someone says you're not.
Hmm.
I think we can all agree with, relate to that in some respects,
Yeah.
be it in a work environment or a personal environment or whatever.
Hmm. And I think,
Um,
going. No, this is just my own thing. In a time where mental health seems to be kind of a much more issue at the forefront of discussions, where there's not as much stigma attached to it now, confidence does play into mental health a lot. So I think
yeah,
like Joe can still be used as like a guiding post, like like the guys in Star Trek or Mission Log talk about morals, meanings, and messages. Joe, you can a lot can be taken away from Joe's whole thing of confidence and how she overcomes it. Granted, it's a fantastical situation, but you can still take stuff from that and apply it to real world. You know?
no, definitely, definitely. I think that's why so many people who came in through new Doctor Who are still loving Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, when she came to the Sarah Jane Adventures, I had only seen one of her stories before then.
Yeah.
Um, but like people were losing their minds that Joe was coming back.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
again, people who maybe hadn't seen the classic stories saw Joe in Sarah Jane Adventures and were like, she seems really cool.
Mm.
And they went back and they became fans of hers. And I think, talking about it as a weakness, I think it's a weakness that is a very human weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that really, particularly when you're only going to have one companion.
Yes.
I know we have the Brig and the boys and stuff, but they're more uh, story based, really,
Yeah.
most of the time. When you're only having one companion, having her have such a relatable component to her personality, I think is a really good entry
Mm.
point for fans watching.
And I think this is the first time again where like, the first time in a rambling history where a weakness we're speaking about it in a positive fashion.
Yeah, like I mean, we kind of said that like about Ian and Barbara in the past. It's like their weaknesses became their strengths, or their strengths
Yeah.
became their weaknesses.
Mm.
This is still a weakness,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a very human, very real weakness, which is very good to see on TV.
Yeah. I know. I agree completely.
So after weaknesses, we have our strengths. So Paddy,
Mm-hmm.
strengths for Joe.
Yeah. So I'd like to start off by making an apology to both, I suppose, Joe and Katie Manning. So listeners from the Joe start will remember that I had made comments about Joe was the something for the dad's
Hmm.
companion. So, and now after going through this run, I would like to make the apology because I was completely wrong in that assessment of Joe. It's coming from like a poor. It was coming from like just a poor memory because I hadn't watched some of these stories in over 10 years, and some of them I'd only watched the once compared to other characters who have watched multiple times. And it's a poor impression to give to someone. It's an poor impression to give to our listeners, first of all, that I know a couple of them, their journey through Classic Who was solely through the podcast. So like they're coming off, they're listening to our recap of the story, they're listening to our impressions of the characters, and I think that assessment at the start was a very poor initial impression to give. Because Joe, as I've said multiple times, quite possibly has the best character growth we've ever seen in the show so far outside of the Doctor.
Yeah.
She's a great example of a companion. She's absolutely fantastic. Like she's clever, resourceful, she's fearless, she's empathic. She's more and like what I love, I always love, is that when she's separated from the Doctor, she can carry the story by herself, and she can also, and that in a sense can also be the more interesting part of the story going on. What's the Doctor doing? Don't really care. What's Joe doing? Tell me more, please. And yeah, like Katie, I think has just catapulted it to my top 10.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sorry, no, sorry, Joe has catapulted it to my top 10. Katie is just a lovely individual from all the interviews and behind the scenes stuff that I've seen. Like, so yeah, no, like I apologize, and I would strongly urge anyone to just to watch her run. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd agree. Look, for me, I'm going to start by reiterating the comments I've made several times now. I was not expecting this character. My experience with Joe before getting into this watch through was I'd seen her in the Sarah Jane Adventures, where yeah, she's very klutzy, but very sweet and a bit of a hippie, which I thought was kind of cool. I had seen Peladon, but only once, and that was years ago, like literally 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And so all I'd seen outside of Sarah Jane and Peladon 10 years ago, all I'd seen of Joe was like random clips online, a lot of which focuses around her introduction to the Doctor, her being really clumsy and really klutzy. And I was like, I'm not going to like this person. And Terror of the Autons didn't really do a whole lot to, make me like her, if I'm honest.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the growth this character has had, I think she's absolutely fantastic. Um, Her strengths for me,
Yeah,
she's incredibly resourceful. Incredibly resourceful. Like in Terror of the Autons, she mentioned all these random skills she has. Like
hmm,
completely
yeah,
fucking weird skills. But what I love is that we see her use them, and not just as a one off, we see her use them over and over again. Her escapology being probably the main one.
yeah,
She's also incredibly brave, and she's able to take care of herself. And like you said, we see this in the long stretches of story where she's separated from the Doctor, and not only is she able to make do on her own without the Doctor, but she's driving the plot forward. Planet of the Daleks a few weeks ago is a prime example. What's the Doctor doing? I don't give a shit.
yeah,
Joe's having a great story here. Let's follow what Joe's doing. And I think that's great. I think we haven't really had a character like that in a very long time. Um, I mean, Liz Shaw kind of had it a bit, but they didn't give her enough screen time for it, I don't think. And before that, it would really be Ian and Barbara, in my opinion.
yeah. No, I'd agree.
Any other strengths specifically you want to call it?
I don't think so. Like, I think we've just kind of nailed everything between like just the fact that she's a very resourceful, fearless, empathic character, and she's capable of carrying the story on her
Mm,
own. Like, if we had seen something like the massacre, which Stephen, on in our opinion, unfortunately didn't carry,
yeah,
I think Joe could have carried something like that. She could have
me
carried
too.
a decent four-parter where she is like the sole focus.
I agree. I agree.
I suppose speaking of stories, will we move into the latter half of the rambling?
Yeah, so we have our low points or our worst stories. I have a 3-2-1. Do you have a 3-2-1?
I have not no, you know me. Normally, I like to have like 3, 2, 1, but for low points, I only have a 2 and a 1.
Okay.
I
And
I
then
could stretch. I could potentially stretch it to a 3, 2, 1, but no, I'll tell you what. I'll stretch it to a 3, 2, 1. Only out of fairness to other companions I've done in the past.
okay, and then we have the best stories, which we also have a 3-2-1.
Yes,
Did
yes.
you do 3-2-1 again? Yeah.
I did 3, 2, 1 because as we've kind of alluded to on the main episodes, this was a fucking tough rambling to decide on a 3, 2, 1 for best stories.
It
It
really
was
was.
fucking tough.
Because also the worst stories was also really tough.
It was like because I went through my notes for everyone. Like no, in previous companions, I knew off the top of my head, yeah, that's a great one, that's a shite one, that's a middling, whatever. Here, I was like, no, I have to go back through all my notes and I have to be cutthroat and I have to really make a decision as to which is the best.
Yeah. My, I'll tell you one thing about my worst. My worst all have
Hmm.
a theme. They have a similar theme on why I don't like
Right.
them.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Uh. So okay, because you've got the theme. Do you want to go first?
Okay, so my 3, 2, 1, where 3 is the least worst and 1 is the worst,
Worst, worst.
um, are at number 3, I have the demons. At number 2, I have the Green Death. At number 1, I have Terror of the Autons. And actually saying it out loud, I'm going to switch 2 and 1. 3 is the demons,
Hmm.
2 is Terror of the Autons, and 1 is the Green Death.
Okay. Cool.
Can you sense
I
the
have two
theme?
of those. Yes, I can sense the team. I have two of those.
Okay, what's your 3, 2, 1?
Purely because of my own fucking OCD when it comes to these lists. I've put Terror of the Autons in at number three.
Mm,
I have Day of the Daleks at number two. And I have Green Death at number one. Green Death
mm,
being the worst. Mhm.
mm. That's sad. It's sad that her
Why is it
last
sad?
story is, in our opinion,
Oh,
her
yeah.
worst.
Yeah. It like oh, it fucking infuriates me. It really does. And I think I was saving a lot of my anger, mostly because I didn't want, the actual Green Death episode to go over time, because I knew we'd be rambling about it. um,
Yeah, so the theme I had, Paddy, what's the theme?
Poor writing of Joe's character and her poor treatment by the other characters in it.
Yep. Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah,
ding.
because like I was like going, oh, but I like Joe and the demons, and I'm like, yeah, but not everyone is nice to Joe and the demons.
Yeah, like it. Picking my third one, like the Green Death and Terror of the Autons. Like Terror of the Autons was always on my list. The Green Death was added to my list as soon as I finished watching it.
Yeah, yeah, that was like,
And then I was trying to pick number 3, and like you, I went back through all my notes. I went back through all of my notes, and without even looking at my notes, the one that was sticking in my mind was the demons. But for the demons, I had put in, "Oh, Joe has this is great, and that's great, and that's great," but she's treated like absolute shit.
yeah.
If you're a fan of Joe, that episode is not good. Do you know?
Okay, yeah, okay. If you're a fan of Joe getting respect and treated right, it's not a good story. But
Yeah,
I think Joe is really good in it, though. I, it's definitely one of my middling ones because of her standing, her defiance against Azal, and just again her resourcefulness in it. Like I just really, really liked it. But I can definitely see, yeah, her treatment in it, and the fact that she doesn't tell everyone to kind of fuck off. It is annoying.
yeah. That's why it's in the number 3 spot. It and there is a big gap between that one and the other two. Like there's a chasm between the demons and Terror of the
Yeah,
Autons.
yeah, there really is.
Um, so I was gonna say, since we both have Terror of the Autons, you have Terror of the Autons in 3, and I have Terror of the Autons in 2. Why don't we do Terror of the Autons next? So, why did you include Terror of the Autons?
Okay, so I included Terror of the Autons because, right, now I remember when we initially did Terror of the Autons, I was like, okay, I can't be too harsh to Joe because we're only just getting to know her, all right?
Hmm.
And there's there's not a like it's tough to get like a full-fledged thing of the character, but we're presented that she has like this defiant streak, and she's meant to represent women's liberation, and sort of the kind of the feminist movement, but she does get talked down to quite a bit in it. And we talked about her confidence issues, and she's just like, no, granted, she's only an agent. She's not the military personnel. She's a civilian agent of unit. So I don't know. Yeah, like maybe she doesn't like at that point in time standing up to the guys. And I think the one big thing that was kind of stuck in my head was that she is presented as overly ditzy or clumsy, not because of the fact that she's a klutz and she knocks stuff over, or what she, putting the smoke out in the doctor's experiment, but I don't know where it's the bad writing. But she goes off to investigate a factory, yet she can't remember what the factory is, and there's no kind of thing of
Mm.
post hypnotic suggestion. And like the thing is, like, okay, you didn't write down beforehand which factories you were going to check out and things like that. So it was just, while we weren't given the best indication of the character, it was still, I know it was the start, but it kind of left a weird bittersweet taste in your mouth, because you were like preparing for now, for fuck's sake, is this what it's going to be like now going forward for each of them? So
Mm.
that's why I put it in at number 3.
Yeah, I'm very similar with you on this one. And I'll give an example. Our first introduction to Stephen was the chase.
Yes.
And at the end of the chase, I knew Stephen was going to come back as a companion. I knew that already. And I was actually looking forward to Stephen coming in because I liked him in the chase.
Yes.
I then fucking hated him after that. But that's the point. For me, as an introductory story, if this was the only story of Joe's I ever watched, I probably wouldn't want to watch any more of her. Because,
Mm.
yeah, she's clumsy and a bit ditzy and whatever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. People are clumsy. But it's presented on the show as this gross negative part of her. Like, this is a major failing of this person. And that's the way the show presents it.
Yeah.
That's the way the doctor
Yeah.
reacts. The doctor's very demeaning to her. Everyone is. They treat her like
Mm.
a child because her uncle works for fucking the UN and got her the job. And I'm like, do you know what? I don't want to watch a character like this. And only because I knew what Joe would become a little bit from seeing her in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and obviously we're doing the podcast, so we didn't really have a choice. I was like, Joe, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. But for an introductory story, for her character, it was incredibly weak.
Yeah.
If you think back to Spearhead from Space, which
Mm.
had to introduce a new Doctor and Liz Shaw, by the
Yeah.
end of it, you're like, Liz is quirky and, well, not quirky, but like she's sassy and fun and
Yeah.
intelligent
Mm.
and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever anyone talks down to her, she's like, oh, fucking mind yourself, like, do you know?
Yeah.
And with Joe, it was just, she's a child
Mm.
who's treated like a moron.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not enjoying this. And I think it was
No, I agree.
I think it did Katie a disservice. And I think it did the character as a
Mm.
whole a disservice to have that be the introduction.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree.
So then we have your number two, which
Yes.
was
Day of the Daleks.
cool. Go.
Right. So we we talk. Okay, we talking the demons, right? And about Joe believes in the supernatural, or she has an interest in the supernatural.
Mm,
And while it's been proven to some extent that science, like, what is it? It was who said it? Was it Arthur C. Clarke said about, any superior form of technology is indistinguishable from magic. Like, we mentioned that a couple of times.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, like, okay, she knows that there's a potential element of science behind supernatural. So when it does the ghost, like, the vanishing person in Day of the Daleks, there's still that element of the super, like, there's still a small belief of the supernatural in her, and the doctor again kind of pokes fun at her about it. And again, I would just love for her to tell him to, just fuck off. Just, and one, I just wanted her to rail back against him, but two, also, I wanted to see her have a small bit more of the critical thinking to kind of say, well, okay, could this have been like, with the demons, could this be a scientific phenomenon as opposed to a supernatural phenomenon? Um, Also, again, because of her tenure with the Doctor, now I know that Day of the Daleks was her first travel through time as such.
Mm.
Like her interactions with the excuse me, the controller, like she seemed to take a lot of stuff at face value, whereas later on down the road she's a bit more critical. Excuse me, a bit more critical of stuff. So I think like when she kind of really gave out to the Doctor for being rude and like but he's telling us this, and it's like, well, yeah, he's telling you this. How many adventures have you been on now where someone has told you something that isn't quite on the up and up? So I just think there should have been a small bit more critical thinking from Joe in that story, based on the development we had seen thus far.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But pole vaulting into the fucking number one position.
We talked about the Green Death earlier in the week. Please
Yes,
see
we
a previous
did.
episode for more of our thoughts on the Green Death. Hello, Terror of the Autons, Part 2.
Yeah. It's just it's
Like,
so frustrating.
what the
And
hell?
I talked I talked about the only reason I would watch it is because of the Doctor and Joe's story. And I think it's more so from the real life thing of John and Katie's story now, the more that I think about it. Because you know me, I'm a
Yeah.
big fucking softy. I'm a big softy. But like Joe's treatment is just so fucking backward. And Joe herself is so
Like,
backward.
your comment there, the only reason you would watch it is because of Joe and the Doctor. That's the main reason I fucking wouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
I don't like their portrayal there. Like, when you take them from the end of Planet
Mm.
into this, you're like, what the fuck was that?
Like
Like,
the more I think about it, I think it's just John and Katie. It's their performance because this is
mm,
a real life. It's a real life is mirroring this. I know me, I'm a big fucking softie, so that is it. Like just to work out their professional goodbye in the context of the story. That's the only reason I go back and watch it.
yeah. I mean, everything you said. I mean, it's literally the Terror of the Autons Part 2. It's
Mm.
the exact same story beats, you know, except she doesn't get to use her. Like, we don't actually see. Yeah, she goes off to investigate the maggots or whatever. But what does Joe actually contribute to the story?
She doesn't drive the plot. She I don't
No.
think she drives the plot in any significant way.
She has that serendipitous moment, and that's it
Yeah.
for her final story.
I think we should do a
Like,
Liz Shaw on this. So when she came back from the planet of the Daleks, she just decided to take a small break and just, leave unit for a while.
yeah, like
Yeah.
we're going to get to we're going to get companions in the future who, when their actors were leaving, they specifically asked not to be married off
Mm.
because
Yeah.
in a show like Doctor Who, in this era
Hmm.
where we don't explore the companions' lives on Earth between stories, to put it in contrast with the New Who era where we do, when you marry them off, it's just someone they've only just fucking met,
Yeah.
you know. And like I said, we're going to get to companions in the future where like the actor, like I was going to say it now, and we'll talk about it again when we get to it. When Elizabeth Sladen was leaving, she begged them not to make her final story about her departure.
Hmm.
She did not want a departure story. She wanted to be her last story, and at the end, she goes, but it wasn't building up into it. Whereas this is building up into Joe leaving,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they don't even do it well.
They really don't.
Like Liz Shaw didn't even get a departure,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I would say her last episode was better.
Yeah. Like, I think the best example of a story leading up to someone's departure was probably Victoria.
Yeah, I would
And
agree. That one
yeah,
was
that was,
handled very well.
it was done incredibly well. And whereas here it's not. It's this is the complete antithesis to that one.
Mm. I think as well the chase was done quite well in the sense that it was a great adventure story and then it was just included at the end
Yeah.
that they could leave.
Yeah, but in terms of like throughout the entirety of the story, like the
Mm,
entirety of the 6 part episode that we'd watch, because I'm even looking at it there now. Fury from the Deep actually made it into my number 2 on her best rambling. You know,
mm,
because of her performance and the whole, it just felt sensible. Whereas here, it doesn't, and it's really really annoying.
yeah. Um, and I think, like I said, like if you're someone who's like, okay, I wasn't a big fan of Terror of the Autons, let's watch her last story to see how she develops. If you only watched her first story and her last story, what a fucking waste of a character.
Huge,
Like, I
hugely.
wouldn't watch that, like.
But how about stuff that you would watch?
Oh, stuff that. This was hard.
It
This
was.
was
It
really
really was.
hard. But you know what? These are stories that one of them I haven't referenced as often, but I referenced it a lot today. I've referenced it a lot in our discussion of the Green Death, and the other two I've been referencing since we first spoke of them.
Okay.
So my 3-2-1, where three is where one is the best, basically.
Mm-hmm.
At number three, I have the Sea Devils. At number two, I have the Planet of the Daleks. At number one, I have the Curse of Peladon.
Nice. That's
How
good.
about you?
Number 3, I have Frontier in Space.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, I have Planet of the Daleks, and number 1, I have Curse of Peladon.
For a second there, I thought we were going to have like a completely different set of three, as like because that would really highlight just how great Joe was as a companion.
Like believe me,
Um,
like I had like Mind of Evil, I had the Sea Devils, I had the
yeah,
Colony in Space. I quite enjoyed the Three Doctors. What else was there? Like, fuck it, the Demons for me. I again, like, I just enjoyed it. Um, there was so much good stuff from Joe, and to narrow it down, like out of 15 stories, to narrow it down to 3, where they're like, we both stretched fucking to have 3 bad ones. Realistically,
mm,
like there's, you could argue that there's 2 or 3 between the three two of us, but God
mm,
Almighty, it was tough picking those 3. But yeah,
yeah,
so um, will I do Frontier first, and you can do Sea Devils,
yeah. You do
or
Frontier first.
yeah?
You go first.
So Frontier, and a lot of what I say about Frontier is going to like echo into Planet. It's just a fucking great story. Like, it really is. Like, Jo carries it so well. She's separated from the Doctor a fair bit. Like, and you're just so interested to get back to Jo's thing. Is like, her interactions with the Master are amazing, because again, Roger was just part of that family, and they worked so well together. It was so fucking good. Um, her intelligence being used against her is great, because it shows the respect that the Master has for her. That he goes like,
Mm,
she's a very clever, resourceful person. I'm going to use that against her. And even his begrudging respect over the fact that she's able to resist his his hypnotic attempts, and also the device. That is just such a great sequence. And like, she shows complete defiance and no fear when she's being interrogated by the president and General Williams. I don't know what more to say other than the fact that the Jo just rules in that story. She's great. I'm so invested in her, that thing. I was like, okay, the Doctor's in the fucking space prison. I don't care about that. I want to know what's happening to Jo in the actual regular prison.
yeah, I'll be honest. Frontier was my coin flip.
Yeah,
It was Frontier or Sea Devils, and I flipped a coin. And this is
I
what I was
think my
saying. Where like if I had to write the list again, it may have
yeah,
come up with Frontier, depending on my mood.
my coin flip was probably Frontier or Mind of Evil, just because like, for the second story to come, to have Terror of the Autons, and then to go into Mind of Evil, where she fucking starts a prison riot to take back control of the prison, is just fucking brilliant. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
like Mind of Evil, because Mind of Evil, like when I was doing my list, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm like, how about Mind of Evil? We kept talking about Mind of Evil. Why haven't I mentioned Mind of Evil? Um, But for me, I think the Sea Devils is really, I think it's really the pinnacle of Joe saving the Doctor.
Yeah.
I think the Sea Devils is a prime example of that, and using, keeping her wits about her. We had some great acting moments from Joe in that, and I
Mm.
just think there was just something about the Sea Devils that just, I was like, you got to see the entirety of Joe as a person. We got to see her compassion. We got to
Hmm.
see her resourcefulness. We got to see her bravery. We get to see everything. We got to see her, like, how she works with other people. We got to see her standing up to your man Chin or Shin or whatever the fuck his name was. Um,
No, that's
just like
Klaus Vaxos. But yeah, like Chin
the other guy,
2.0.
whatever his name is, the Chin 2.0.
Yeah. Mr. Where's My Toast?
Same,
Mr. Where's My Toast?
yeah, same, yeah. There's like, it was
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic, and for me, I was like, we're going to talk about Planet and Curse in a second, which personally I think are on
Mhm.
their own level, um, when it comes
Yeah.
to Joe stories. But I think for me, going through the ones we had for driving plot, for having impact, for saving the Doctor, for being brave, for using her resourcefulness, for me, Sea Devils was a prime example. But again, had I had a different notion when I woke up yesterday morning and I wrote this list, Frontier probably would have been it. And had I wanted, and do you know what
Yeah.
it probably was? I, Mind of Evil and Frontier both have the Master in them, and my feelings with the Master are kind of higgledy piggledy. The Sea Devils also has the Master, I'll admit, but I often forget he's in
Yeah.
it. So, because Joe doesn't really interact with him that much in it,
Hmm. Yeah.
she's just off doing her own shit. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a dartboard. Just throw a dart. Pick one of them.
Yeah. It is, and you can talk for ages about it. No, I agree.
Yeah.
So Planet of the Daleks.
Planet of the Daleks was an amazing story. Anyway,
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
but for Joe, I think it starts off with Joe alone. Well, practically starts off with Joe alone,
Hmm.
and never once does she waver. Never once does she fall.
No.
She is in this bonkers environment, and she keeps going, and she keeps making the right strategic choice. We spoke when we were talking about the episode how she goes into the base to rescue the Doctor. And then she leaves and goes and gets the bombs, which was the right choice. The
Yeah,
Doctor was fine.
absolutely.
He was out. He's like, okay, he's out of his cell. He'll be fine. Off I go. Do you know? Again, we get to see great compassion. Yeah, we do have and actually, these two stories both have a love interest. Um,
Hmm.
but it's done well. I don't know. It's just, it was really really good. It was really good. I couldn't think of a single negative thing to say about her in that story. To be honest,
No, I
it just wasn't
completely
as good as
agree.
Curse, which is why it's in second.
No, no, I completely agree because, like as you said, she's constantly making the right decision. Like she takes the when she goes outside, like she's recording everything, she's documenting everything, even to like when she passes out, she's recording stuff for the Doctor, knowing that he'll wake up. Like her relationship with Wester is great. It's fucking
Mm,
brilliant. I love the fact that even when she gets paired up with Latap, you know that she's the one in charge of the fucking two, despite the fact that he's the one with the mission brief and he's the one that's carrying the gun. She's the one in charge of that duo. It doesn't need to be.
mm,
There doesn't need to be like a moment where like control has to be given to her. You just know straight
mm.
away that Joe is in charge of this duo, and it's just fucking great. And look, fearless, resourceful, intelligent. she doesn't have a bad moment in it. She doesn't. She really, really is just A1 in that story.
Yeah. And then it goes into the Green Death, and what the fuck?
Yeah.
But we've already talked about the Green Death to death.
Yes. Yes.
So in our number one spot, we have the first Joe Grant story I ever watched, and then subsequently
Hmm.
forgot everything about it.
Yes.
The Curse of Peladon.
Which is, it's absolutely amazing because if you think about it, okay, while it is not her first trip off world, she's already had that. It is her first trip
Mm,
off world where again, sorry, no, it's not. It's not even her first trip off world where she's separated from the Doctor because we've had that. But this is her first trip off world where there's so much responsibility on her because she's playing a part that has galactic ramifications, and she doesn't blink once.
yeah.
Like she
Except
handles
when
the
they imply that she's going to get married. Small blink.
yeah. Okay. Well, okay, fine, smartass. I could have said the same thing about how Joe never falls down. Well, she did fucking fall when she fainted, in Planet of the Daleks. Yeah, so. But, like, no, it's like she. We have the racial prejudice of the Doctor against the Ice Warriors, and
Mm,
she's the one that fucking bridges that gap because of how does with Islir. Like their relationship was fantastic. I think their relationship
yeah.
was even better than hers and the Doctor's in that story. Um, her relationship with Peladon of the planet Peladon. Like I thought they worked well together. I thought they really worked well together. And again, I suppose it's from the chemistry of uh, David Troughton and her. But like she's just, even when the Doctor introduces her as Princess Josephine of TARDIS, she doesn't slip. Like she immediately goes into the role, and she acts the part of actual nobility or of a noble dignitary. And again, like the fearlessness, like going outside the fucking castle in the middle of a storm on a crumbly ledge. You can't falter. Like no, this is this is the best Joe story for me.
Yeah, I would agree. And like for me, everything what you said, her again we see her resourcefulness. I love her and Isler. I think they're fucking fantastic. Like those two need an entire spin off just on their own.
Oh, hugely, definitely.
Joe and Isler like in a sort of Holmes and Watson solving crime.
Yeah.
Fucking brilliant. Um but like Joe faces so much in this story in terms of she has to deal with the Doctor's prejudice against the Ice Warriors,
Hmm.
first of all. You have this serious fucking mistrust of her because she's a woman coming from the advisor. You have Peladon being like very, very sweet in his own way, but
Hmm.
also putting a lot of pressure on her, both from a romantic entanglement perspective,
Hmm.
but also from a political perspective. And I love how, as soon as she senses it's getting political, she's pushing back. You want to flirt with me? Flirt all you want. You want to use my emotions to get something for you politically? Fuck off. Stop doing that. And she calls him on it. Which, again, why she couldn't call Cliff on his bullshit in the Green Death, who knows? But I think it's just perfect. Like the thing that was missing in Planet of the Daleks was her standing up for someone or standing up
Hmm.
to someone. Do you know?
Yeah.
And in Curse of Peladon, we get that. We get the full Joe Grant picture in Curse of Peladon. And to be honest, if they were going to have Joe run off and marry someone, I almost wish she'd gone back to Peladon.
Yeah.
You know, I almost wish that they'd gone back to Peladon and she'd met him again and kind of gone, do you know what? I can make a difference here. I
Hmm.
love him. I actually kind of wish that like at the end of the Green Death, she was like, do you know, I met this guy named Cliff. He's a bit of an asshole, right? But he kind of reminded me a little bit of Peladon, and like the whole time I was with Cliff, I was thinking Peladon. Doctor, can you take me back to Peladon, please?
Yeah.
And like she goes back to Peloton and she stays there.
And presumably she would have gone because Benton is getting close to Nancy, so obviously she has no luck there, so she might as well go back to Peloton.
Yeah. But like I think I think Curse of Peloton is it is the hands down best story for Joe. All of the others, I think Planet is like the very close second. The other ones we can kind of pick and choose,
Yeah.
but like Curse is amazing, and like I said, it boggles my mind that I had seen Curse before, and yet I still went into this rewatch kind of going, "Oh, okay, I don't know how I'm going to feel about Joe." And I'll be honest, part of that may have been your fault from your something for the
Possibly.
dads comment.
Yeah, possible. Yeah, no, and like as I said, like I fucking put up my hand for that for a misleading comment because
Mm,
I think, and like I could shift the blame to Darren O'Brien because he was the one that first mentioned like Doctor Who's sexy companion, something for the dads, and again I think my just image was of Joe's outfit from from the Three Doctors, which she's amazing at, by the way, like she's fucking hot in it.
mm.
But I just think that was that that description placed with that costume was where I put that, and I regret it ever fucking it coming out of my mouth because she's anything but.
Well, she's a little like she is still
Well,
pretty,
no,
yeah,
well, no,
but she's
that's what I'm
not
saying. Like,
just
no,
that.
she's not just yeah. Sorry, she is not. She's not something for the dads. She's something for everyone because of what she represents.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned that Joe had come like shooting up into your top 10. Has she made it into your top 5 of the companions we've seen so far, and where would she rank?
Where was she ranked so far? Oh,
Mm.
so far, it's like I think so far she's in top five because I just love her character development so much. I think she's either number three or number four at the moment because I love Liz so much, and I'm going like, but do I want Liz number three or do I want Joe number three? I'm not sure. I'm going to say that at the moment, Joe is my fourth favorite. She's knocked Jamie into the fifth spot at the moment because I just think in terms of everything, with the positives and the negatives, Joe just wins out better. I think.
So I'd be the same. She knocked Jamie down to 5. I would put her in number 4. I'd
Mm-hmm.
still put Liz in number 3, just because
Yeah.
personally I relate more to Liz as a character.
Yeah.
But that's no slight against Joe. That's just a
No. No.
personal. This is a personal like the way I relate to a character. Was I expecting her to jump into the number 4 spot? No, not a hope. um, but I'm very glad she did, and I'm very glad. I'm actually very glad that we do this podcast, and I actually got to explore her character from beginning to end now because I've obviously seen the Sarah Jane Adventures episode. Um,
Yeah.
anyone who wrote Joe off as a total ditz, a screamer companion or whatever, lads, you have to watch it the whole with her.
Yeah. You really do. And like,
Or just watch Mind
I,
of Evil to Planet of the Daleks and leave out the first one and the last one.
yeah. And I was just looking up there because the way certain people said, "Oh, I have a favorite story." Mind of Evil is one of her favorites. She really enjoyed Mind of Evil. Yeah, but definitely Mind of Evil to Planet of the Daleks, and then just make up your own ending. It's fine.
Yeah. Like I said, she went back to Paladon, or, she, realized that she doesn't like working for the military, but she does like working for the UN. So maybe she worked for like UN peacekeeping corps or something.
Yeah. Oh, so that is another rambling done and dusted. We've said goodbye to another companion, and sad to see her go. But as I mentioned, as I mentioned at the end of Green Debt, there's someone that we've both been very much looking forward to coming on Monday. So join us for the Time Warrior and the introduction of Sarah Jane Smith. Bye.
Bye.